Ladies and gentlemen, 10 signs it's a trauma bond and not real love. We will see how a trauma bonded relationship forms, how it builds up and then slowly but gradually crashes into emotional suffering, codependency and addiction, sign by sign. Plus, in the end, we will also explore what real love actually might be and how it looks like. If you're new here, my name is Robert and I'm not a healthcare professional myself, but instead I share a client's perspective here on this channel. Before we dive into the roller coaster ride with Mary, let's understand first what a trauma bond actually is. And to do so, let's see what a trauma bond is not. And that's a common misconception here. A trauma bond is not two people that are bonding through a trauma because, for example, they have the same history, or you meet someone in a group therapy, or for example, in our community here somewhere in a class, and you see, oh, someone posted something that I also can relate to, and now we have like a similar past and we bond through that. That's not a trauma bond. I found a pretty good definition here on the website Sandstone Care. And they say that a trauma bond is a strong, unhealthy emotional attachment that forms between a person and the person who abuses or mistreats them. And a trauma bond is, therefore, when deep attachment develops through that person and the abuser, and that developed through a cycle of physical or emotional abuse or sexual abuse, sometimes through manipulation or trauma followed by positive reinforcement. So that you constantly, and we, for example, had that in the past episode, that you constantly, you wait like in front of the slot machine until it gets better and that the relationship will unfold positively in the end. And you constantly have those dopamine spikes and it feels like a roller coaster, right? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Exactly like, as I said, when you are in a casino, for example. So to sum that up, when we have a trauma bond, there's always an unhealthy attachment that forms with the abuser. And what does it mean in terms of a romantic relationship? What is an abuser in a romantic relationship? Well, it is usually a partner that harms you physically, that harms you emotionally or sexually. And that's obviously someone who is in a toxic relationship. There's also commonly a narcissist or someone like a psychopath involved here, but it doesn't have to be. It could also be someone with an insecure attachment style. So when you, for example, have someone who has deep wounding themselves, is avoidantly attached or fearful avoidantly attached, this is then resulting in this pretty toxic dynamic between a person, a partner, and an abuser. And it's so extremely difficult when you are in such a relationship because we have this positive reinforcement. We constantly wait for the dopamine spike and we are in this up and down, this on and off relationship, chaos, connection, drama and affection. And it's also the case that for someone with an insecure attachment style, when you are the partner that is attached to an abuser, then this type of relationship with a lot of drama, with this ups and down, that's so familiar to you because maybe you didn't learn it in any different way. Maybe this is what connection and love meant to you already as a child. So you somehow also feel safe around those ups and downs in terms that you know this feeling and that is familiar to you. Now let's get from slot machines, where positive reinforcement is usually installed through cash wins, to the actual roller coaster of a trauma bond, where we also sometimes have these tiny wins where it feels like we can actually have a healthy and loving relationship with that person. And therefore, to understand that roller coaster ride, let's start in the beginning where the ride actually begins. And this first sign is called the honeymoon phase, or you could also say the love bombing phase. For Mary, in this relationship, she met a man, and the relationship with that man, it actually starts like a dream. There is passion, there is intensity, there is instant connection with this man, and He's such a gentleman. He makes so many compliments. He brings her flowers. He brings her presents, invites her to dinners. He's super present and caring with her. Sometimes it even feels a little too much for her. But overall, she feels absolutely seen, like she never felt before. She feels adored. She feels chosen by that man, and she can't believe how incredibly easy it feels with this person, how perfect that man is that she just found. It's like a miracle with that person, and it's exactly like she ever imagined that in her fantasy. But by the way, from her side, what we can observe here on this first step on the roller coaster ride is also limerence. And limerence is when there is obsessive romantic infatuation. So to get into such a relationship, usually with a trauma bonding and love bombing person, you also have, let's say, some attraction there from your side. And I made a full episode about limerence up here when it comes to this obsessive romantic infatuation, something that you are longing for, something that you are looking exactly in those people. And what she thinks to this point is that this is Prince Charming that she was looking for her whole life. And this is how it looks in this moment. But we'll see through the story, when it goes on, that it might unfold in, let's say, a different direction here. Therefore, let's see how the second stop on the roller coaster ride looks like. Because slowly, the dynamic starts to shift. He sets the emotional tone suddenly, when it's good and when it's bad, what's allowed and what's not allowed. And Mary starts to adapt to that, and she starts to learn to read his moods like warning signs on a track. And also she starts to follow these unwritten rules. She does so to please him, because she already learned that as well. If she wouldn't follow his rules, he would explode. He would become upset with her. But slowly, another thing unfolds here. Part of his rules is also that he starts pulling away Mary from her other people that love her and that she loves as well. Her friends, for example. He criticizes her family. He even makes her feeling guilty for needing and wanting alone time. And before she realizes it, her world suddenly starts to shrink down more and more and more, until it's basically just him and her. She stops calling people back, her friends, her family. She cancels plans with her family and friends. And she also somehow forgets how freedom actually looks like. And she does all this not because she actually doesn't need her friends and family anymore, but she does this because she is anxious and she has fear that if she wouldn't follow those unwritten rules, he would get upset with her. And even worse, he would leave her. Prince Charming would leave her if she's not following his rules. And she's super afraid of that because in her childhood, she often got abandoned. And this is obviously not closeness. This is not love. What he's doing there is he's controlling and manipulating her. And now he's even intensifying that. Let's have a look at sign number 3 here. Honesty is dangerous. Mary doesn't even remember when she stopped being honest with him and with herself. She's abandoning herself, her own needs and emotions. She just knows here that every time she tried to communicate what she needs, what she wants, her boundaries, it ended pretty badly with Prince Charming. So now there's no other choice to her but suppressing everything. Her feelings, her needs, her own identity, just to keep the peace in the relationship. She stays quiet to not trigger him, to not make him upset, and obviously to not make him leave. And that's definitely something that you should never do in a healthy relationship. But for people with complex childhood trauma, this is actually often everyday business, that they repress their emotions, needs, and boundaries. And I learned and still learn this the hard way through therapy these days. And I share all of these learnings in our premium courses as well, where I open up about what I learned in therapy. Express emotions the healthy way in your relationships. This is what you should do to not get in a trauma bond. Also, when it comes to your needs, the second most important thing, communicate what you need, understand what you need when you have complex trauma, how to say that to your partner without making him or her upset. And as well, very important, communicating and setting healthy boundaries, to not give up your own identity, to not abandon your own needs, desires, and wants. If you want to join us and support this channel and project as well, you can have a look at our premium courses. Just go to understandable.net. You can start a 7-day free trial here, and then you get access to more than 40 additional video courses here that go in depth exactly into those topics. We also have new courses every month, practical exercises from therapy, and AI communication trainers are brand new now on the platform, where you can also try and train to communicate your needs and feelings more openly. And now back to Marie's story. She carefully measures her words, her tone, even her breathing. Because every day to her feels like walking on a minefield. She tells herself that she's just being understanding with him, but in reality she's terrified of his reaction. Maybe her mother or her father was also that way, constantly screaming when she was offering an emotion or sharing a need. And that fear, that constant tension that she's feeling in this trauma-bonded relationship, and this is probably true also for many of you out there, this has become the reason for her stress, her chronic anxiety, and her sleepless nights. Because deep down, her body screams constantly, this is unfair. You shouldn't repress yourself, and you want to be seen and want to be heard. But trauma bonds have a cruel logic here. They teach you that silence is safer than the truth. Because when she would open up, when she would communicate those emotions, needs, boundaries, she would get rejected. And that hurts way more than repressing herself, at least to some point. So Mary's fawning now. And the fawning response is, by the way, another response of the nervous system, because she's so addicted to harmony. She tries to people please and to keep up the harmony through that. She tries to control the chaos and the drama by avoiding it, by not facing it and not forcing it. She's not free in that relationship, not emotionally. She's surviving here. But through that, she's trying to keep the relationship alive, because this is the only type of relationship that feels familiar to her until this day. But the worst thing is, it doesn't stop with her repressing her feelings and needs. At some point, Mary starts to feel like she's losing her mind. Because every time she brings something up, something that hurt her, he tells her that she's the one who's wrong. And this is sign number 4, gaslighting. He tells her that she's overreacting, that she remembers it wrong. When she cries, he says she's being too dramatic. When she pulls away, he says she's being cold. And slowly he talks her into a different version of reality, a version where he's being the calm person, the rational guy in the relationship, and where she is the unstable one with weird feelings and desires and needs. He minimizes her pain, twists her words, and finds ways to make her feeling guilty for feeling hurt. And for Mary, it always ends the exact same way. It's your fault. And over time, the constant talking down, the quiet humiliation, the rewriting of the truth, it breaks something inside her. Mary stops trusting her own mind. And when you don't trust your own mind anymore, you will believe almost anything, especially the lies that keep you in a trauma-bonded relationship. And it continues with sign number 5. Because here Mary notices something strange. There is one set of rules for him and another set for her. He can raise his voice, he can disappear for days, flirt with other people, and somehow it's always fine. But if she ever did the same, it would be chaos in the relationship. She would be called disrespectful, ungrateful, crazy. She would never get away with treating him like he treats her. Not even once. He holds the power and she knows about it. And they have this weird dynamic in the relationship that it's not something that they ever say out loud, but it's constantly there under the surface. It's there in every look, in every silence, in every unspoken threat that reminds her to stay small and to hide and to keep her needs and emotions away from him. She would never even think of hurting him the way he hurts her. Not because she can't, but because her empathy, her conscience, her love won't let her. And that's exactly how he keeps the control in the trauma bond relationship. So the roller coaster goes on. And to understand the sixth sign a bit more, we have to get this following reality first. When two people are deeply wounded, the relationship often becomes codependent and not connected, but enmeshed. So let me explain that. In a healthy relationship, both people have boundaries. They can say, this is my feeling, this is your feeling. But in a trauma bond, those boundaries, they disappear. One person becomes often the rescuer, the other person becomes the victim. One is addicted to control, the other is addicted to care or to rescuing. But codependency, what I'm describing here, that's not real love. Codependency is also an attachment form based on a survival strategy. There's, for example, the complex trauma expert on YouTube that I value a lot, Tim Fletcher. And he has a great series on codependency. I will put the link in the description below. And he says that codependency is two people that are trying to solve each other's problems and trying to meet each other's trauma-caused needs, for example, on the level of a self-esteem and on an emotional level, which they will never be able to solve because of those deep traumatic wounds. So when those deep needs, this deep longing, this filling this hole within ourselves through a relationship, when this comes up, the solution is never to look for the missing puzzle piece in another person. The solution here is to work on that yourself. And that's easier said than done. Get that, because I'm also struggling with that. So I don't have an ultimate solution here. But we have to understand that we have the ability to try to learn that a bit more. So in a codependent relationship, there is one person that then becomes the other person's enabler of unhealthy behavior. So it makes, when you have this dynamic, it makes the other person the immature one or the irresponsible one. You could also compare that with the classic parent and child-like relationship type. And that can also vary depending on your partner or also depending on where you are in the relationship right now. So you have different phases in your relationships. Sometimes you are the child, sometimes you are the grown-up, then the other person is the child, and it switches. This is codependency in an intimate adult relationship where both people are basically, reacting out of their inner child's and then switch the roles. The next thing is the enabler in that relationship also reacts on the unhealthy behaviors. They try to solve the other person's problems and constantly try to meet their partner's trauma-based needs. And the consequence of that, if you constantly try to rescue the other person, you will also lose track of your own problems and needs. And this way, that's basically the summary, people pleasers are created. So when you find these types of relationships, it's usually harmony-addicted relationships or people-pleasing relationships. And this is also exactly, to finish this background story now, where Mary is right now. She doesn't know where she ends or where she begins. His moods decide her moods. His silence feels like punishment, and his happiness feels like a relief. She doesn't have her own friends anymore. She doesn't have her own life, her own opinions. She's become his emotional caretaker, constantly soothing, fixing, rescuing him, all while slowly losing herself. They are kind of melted together in this codependent, chained-like relationship constellation here. But then there's also sign number 7. And this is where the trauma bond becomes the strongest, when the same person who hurts you is also the person who comforts you. And when you hear this right now, the person who is giving you this feeling of love and closeness and affection is also the same person who's giving you the feeling of threatening and of tension and stress. Then all the alarm bells might ring, because this definitely sounds like an avoidant or a fearful avoidant attachment style here. This will feel very familiar if you have those types of insecure attachments, because love and threat for those people often, unfortunately, have lived in the same place. The person you depended on was also the person who scared you. And that confusion then, that becomes your blueprint for love. And that's, again, we'll link that now back to the trauma bond. This is when you learned that safety comes after pain and that love is something that you have to earn, to fix, or to fight for. So for Mary, it's always this up and down roller coaster with positive reinforcement again. Remember the slot machine example. He wounds her, so she loses. But then he comforts her, and then he raises her mood again. Her relief is being talked to, and she's like, oh my gosh, yes, there is still a chance that this relationship will work out. So somehow he becomes her drug, her antidote, her withdrawal in a way. This is addiction. So every time she breaks down, he's there, he's holding her, apologizing, promising to change. And for a moment, she feels seen again, she feels heard again, she feels hopeful. She relaxes. But deep down she knows that he's not healing her. He's reactivating her wound of her own fearful avoidant attachment style. And this is what keeps her stuck on the roller coaster, mistaking the relief from pain as love itself. But the ride doesn't stop here. Not yet. So we go on to sign number 8. And to this point, you probably also experienced that. It's super exhausting. And Mary is totally done, emotionally, physically. But that doesn't mean that she's stopping to try. She reads books. She watches videos like this one here. She listens to podcasts. She maybe even goes to therapy to figure things out, always hoping that if she just learns enough, if she finally understands why he is that way, maybe he is fixable. Maybe she can finally fix what's broken between them. So she studies her own triggers, her own childhood, explores her patterns, and somehow it always leads back to the same thought. If I can heal myself, maybe he will change too. But what Mary doesn't realize here is that she's the one in the relationship doing all of the emotional work, and that relationship that she's in right now, that this relationship was never built on equality. So she's repairing something here that she didn't break. She's cleaning up the emotional mess that he keeps making. And every time she takes the blame, it confirms his belief that she's the problem and he's the victim. But the truth here is, he's not waiting for her to fix it. He doesn't even think it's broken. Because for him, the relationship is the chaos, the power imbalance, the guilt, the control. But for Mary, she tried to hold it all together. And by doing so, this is the only way in the relationship that she's currently in that gives her the feeling that she still matters. Because remember that she completely abandoned herself at this point, that she completely built her own identity and self-worth on the relationship with him and on the rescuing mission that she's on while trying to save him, trying to make him a more secure person. That's not going to happen. And because that's not going to happen, we will now face sign number 9 here. And that's definitely one of the darkest and most painful parts of this whole roller coaster ride. It's called the abuse escalation. And in this phase, the abuser, so Prince Charming, will emotionally, physically, and sexually abuse her because he doesn't have any respect for her. And by now, all boundaries are gone. His cruelty has gotten bolder. He uses sharper words, name-calling, colder silence, stronger control, and the I'm sorries that he sometimes drops, they feel emptier every time. There is nothing to apologize for anymore because he won't change his behavior anyways. And sometimes he blames his temper. Sometimes he blames his stress. He says, I had a bad day. Sorry I was being so rude. Or he says, you know how I am when I'm tired or hungry. You're just too sensitive. You are the problem. But every excuse is another way of just saying my pain matters more than the damage that I cause you. And Mary, still, she believes him up to this day. She still tells herself, because she's not seeing that, she's not want to face the truth. She's holding to this fantasy that this somehow might work out. And she tells herself that it's maybe not that bad, that everyone has fights in their relationships and that he maybe didn't mean it this way. But the truth still is the truth that she doesn't want to face. The abuse is slowly but gradually escalating. It's escalating emotionally and maybe even physically or sexually. And if you personally experience emotional, sexual, or physical abuse here, please consider working with a professional here. In this story with Mary, he continues to cross her boundaries. He's doing that repeatedly, and she somehow keeps forgiving him. It's clearly that he's hurting her, but she's still clinging to that version of him that she met in the beginning. She has this image of Prince Charming still somewhere in her mind and in her heart, and she remembers how it felt like, how good and seen and heard she felt. But a healthy relationship, and that's the truth here, is built on mutual respect. It feels safe, physically and emotionally, and you can make mistakes without being humiliated and without being constantly gaslighted. And to differentiate that a bit more, here's a list of things that a safe partner will never say to you. They will never say, you are too emotional, you are too needy, you are too sensitive, you are stupid, you are dumb. Everyone knows that you are the problem in the relationship. Mary's body knows the truth. She feels addicted to someone who's slowly destroying her. Her nervous system tells the truth. She's constantly anxious, walking on eggshells, is full of anxiety, and slowly her body pulls her out of that, brings her back, and she's trying to realize that this relationship, this trauma bond, it's not love. This is constant survival. But before we continue now to the 10th and last stop on the roller coaster, I also want to discuss a common misconception here, what emotionally safety actually means, especially for insecurely attached people. And this came to my mind while I was writing the script, because it's not always the case that you are in a trauma-bonded relationship. Because some people, especially with an avoidant or with a fearful avoidant / chaotic attachment style, they mistake conflict and disagreements in relationships often as emotional unsafety and also even sometimes as abuse. And then they, the relationship is not safe. That's not the truth. When conflict, fights, disagreements are present in a relationship, this is usually pretty tricky for someone with an insecure attachment style, because out of their own wounding, they unconsciously look for a relationship that is always full of harmony. They often, not always, but I often see that, for example, also in myself as well, they want an unrealistic feeling of safety. They want that the other person never raises any conflict and never communicates any needs or boundaries that somehow might criticize their own needs and boundaries or emotions or their behavior, for example. So definitely be careful if you have an avoidant / fearful avoidant attachment style. You may also tell yourself your own ego stories here. And if you want to deep dive more into that, because now you're curious about that topic, there's also a video on that, people pleasing and healthy conflict. We'll link that to you up here and in the description below as well. And now let's head to the final 10th sign here. On that last stop on the roller coaster ride, Mary has tried to leave more times than she could count. Each time she swears it's over, but then she remembers the beginning. She still remembers how it feels, the laughter, the passion, the way Prince Charming looked at her like she was the only person in the world. And that memory that keeps pulling her back like gravity. The thing is that her body, because of her traumatic childhood, still craves the rush, the adrenaline, the chaos, the emotional highs. And she mistakes that this intensity that she feels there is actually not love, because her nervous system is the part in her that has been trained to confuse danger with connection. So for her, every breakup feels like withdrawal. Every reunion feels like a relief. And that's not chemistry with this person. Let me be clear here. This is childhood trauma. Her body, it still believes that love means tension, uncertainty, and proving her worth. But what she's really addicted to here is the hope that this time the ride won't end in pain, because it's not her first relationship that might end like this. And that's how trauma bonds keep us trapped, chasing the illusion of safety inside the very thing that is also probably breaking us. And this is basically the bottom line of what trauma bonding is. Leaving the relationship feels like dying, but staying will kill you. So, where does healing begin? Healing begins when you step off exactly that roller coaster. When you realize that real love doesn't feel like survival. But what does real love actually feel like? That's the last thing that we're gonna explore now in the end of today's episode. First of all, real love. I read a comment on a previous video here on the channel, and someone wrote, "You don't know what real love is." And that real love is like a concept and an abstract term. And I totally agree with that, because I think also that real love in general, it does mean something different for each of us. Everyone has a different concept or understanding of love or real love. But what I usually see when I talk to people is that true love is usually not this intense up and down. It's not the obsession or the emotional chaos here that we see in trauma-bonded relationships. True love is usually calm love. It's grounded and mutual. And some people might say true love is also a bit boring, but in a good way, because it's this constant feeling of safety. I also somewhere have read this a sentence where someone wrote, "Love is like a roof over your head, that is always there." That's a nice image, isn't it? Love grows through safety, through presence and consistency, and not through fantasy or codependency. And I think we can all agree on that, right? True love in a relationship allows you to be fully yourself, not the performing version of yourself. So when you watch this now, then let me tell you that you definitely deserve someone who is making you feel safe and who is prioritizing you. And you can ask yourself, if you are in a relationship right now, do I feel valued? Do I feel safe and supported? Are my needs validated and my emotions and feelings are seen? But again, and that's another tricky part here that you could reflect on if you are an avoidantly or fearful avoidantly attached person, when you, for example, have learned through your own childhood that you are the only person that you can rely on, and that you need a lot of alone time, that you always need to prioritize your own needs first, because whenever you tried to co-regulate with another person, for example, a caregiver, it was a threat, it was difficult, you got abandoned, someone talked your emotions and needs down, then maybe, just maybe, you developed a concept of love that is based on values that don't prioritize a healthy and fulfilled relationship first, but prioritize your own needs first. So maybe you are the person in the relationship that is not seeing the other person's needs and emotions sometimes, because you're so focused on your own survival, because you had to protect your own feelings and needs as a child so intensely. When that is you, and your partner might be complaining that you don't see them, that you don't hear them, then let me tell you that this might not be a trauma bond that you're in here. This just might be your own insecure attachment style, making you not being fully committed on a real bond. Just as something that you could reflect on. And now I'm curious, are you in a trauma bond type relationship right now? Have you left a trauma bonded relationship if you want to share your own experiences, definitely do so in the comments below. I'm curious to read about your experiences, about your healing journeys. If you want to support the podcast here, definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and I see and speak to you in the next episode. Hopefully I wish you a very regulated and hopefully safe, trauma-bonded free day.